Okay, so the question was, how much does charisma or personality apply in sales? So I'll tell you a story. When I was recruiting students to sell books door to door, we used to get really excited when we meet like a really charismatic dude. You know, like he's good with the girls, the guys like him, he's on the track team, like he's popular, he's cool. And those kids would always fail very quickly at sales. And it was shocking. And then we realized why. Because imagine you're a highly charismatic person, right? How used are you to being just flat out rejected and castigated by strangers?
Never.
Right? So you don't have any grit. So these kids would like, I'm so popular, I'm so cool, I'm so cute. They would go out, and, you know, they knock on a couple of doors, and like some angry dad is answering the door in his underwear. Like, the hell do you want? Get the hell off my property. And they're like, what? And they're just like, it just scrambles their brains, and they would break down and cry.
Wow.
Crazy, right? So for me, I had an advantage. Like I was a disagreeable kid, so I wasn't very popular in school. And so for me, rejection, like, yeah, I faced it just like everybody else, but it didn't impact me the same way, right? So you'd be shocked, man. Like sometimes the most charismatic people are just horrible for sales. Also because, you know, they're likable because they're so agreeable.
Right.
Agreeability is not a good trait for sales, because what's going to happen is when you're agreeable, people lie to you all the time. Like, send me an email, follow up with me, call me later. And you're like, great. Like, you think you're doing a good job by pleasing them.
Yeah.
It's like buying presents for a girl who doesn't like you. Like, yeah, she'll take the presents and she'll take the attention. She'll take it for years until you realize you're just stupid.
Right. Interesting. What about confidence though?
Well, again, what is confidence?
Just the ability to, you know, convey your message, can you do the sale properly, talk to the person, and be trustworthy.
That's
right?
not confidence. That's very different. Like that, what you're describing is just like communication skills.
Basically.
Right? Yeah. Confidence is confidence. Like, and what is confidence? So confidence is like this. Potentially one way to rate confidence, if I were to go down that direction, would be like, what is your disability in viewing negative outcomes? Because sometimes the most successful people just have a disability in seeing the negative outcome. Like, they think big because they don't see the failure involved, right? But that's also naivety.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a degree of naivety to be successful. So confidence and naivety aren't that different, right? Now, if it's based and predicated by some experience of past success, or just like training, like you go write your law exam, you're confident because you trained yourself, you studied so much, right?
True.
But training, practicing my sales script with you is not the same when I get on the phone with a prospect, because they're in different emotional states.
Right.
And so I don't know what the hell I'm getting when they pick up the phone. It could be a guy that just got divorced and he's the saddest mofo you ever met. I've also had a guy just got divorced. He's the happiest guy you ever talked to. So you get the plethora of human emotion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then you have to basically captivate that emotion to the outcome that you want. And that requires a degree of social intelligence. So sales is unique in that sense because there's so much nuance in how a human comes to you, right? Sometimes they get, like, I remember we used to recruit from engineering students that got like 100 averages in university, the smartest kids you ever met.
Yeah.
They memorize their sales talk. They know all the objection answers. They can't sell shit because like they have no emotionality and no correct like mimicking of the person, or not even mimicking, but just rapport building. Like, they just assume everybody thinks logically, but sales isn't logical. There's a strong emotional element to who you work with. There's a strong emotional element in who you like. Yeah. Now, you can gamify that. But it takes years to gamify. That's like learning to approach girls on the street. Yeah, you can gamify it and get numbers from all of them, but and even get good outcomes from the rest of that process. But it takes years to learn that process. It's not something you learn from a script.
Right. Can you learn how to read people?
You can 100% learn how to read people, but you got to be in front of a lot of people.
Right.
Right.
So then for you then, in your case, going back to my original question, it's really just about trying and doing and repeating and going out there, being in front of people, not being afraid of rejection, and learning the skill, right? I mean, that's ultimately
here's a
your
question to
success.
ask, right? Like, can you learn to play the piano?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you can. So can you learn to play the piano by yourself with no teacher?
Well, if you try hard enough,
you probably could.
Yeah, you could.
You probably could, but will that be accelerated with a good teacher that understands how to teach and develop you?
Of course.
And also that teacher will teach you hundreds of years of knowledge, through the science and art of the piano, not just the science. Like they have this thing where like highly autistic kids can replicate songs very well, but they can't write their own music because they understand the pattern, but they don't understand how to create the art. Yeah. So sales has a little bit of that. Like, yeah, there's the understanding, but there's also the intuition. So for example, you and I, like we talked about this earlier, like you are an incredible lawyer. Like you wrote the bar exam in England, you wrote it in New York, like you're the top tier law firm. You're the man, you and I can study 20 hours for the same exam. And even though we both study the same amount of time, you'll go out and you'll get an A on that exam and I'll get a C. And it's like, but we studied the same amount of time. Well, there's no guaranteed outcome, right? Yeah. maybe you're just better calibrated for that profession and the way that you think and apply, and apply frameworks to different arguments. You're just better calibrated for that profession than I am. Similarly, I've got salespeople here that have been 3 years and salespeople that are in their first year, and the guy in his first year is outselling the guy in his third year. Even though the third year person put way more time into it, the rookie is just better calibrated for the profession of sales. Just they have some like everybody can succeed to their own potential, of course, but there's just some inclinations that we're geared towards, right?
Yeah. And so, okay. And then your experience, what do you think is the defining either characteristic or trait or quality that you see across different salespeople and that differentiates people and puts them above everyone else?
Well, the number one thing is just grit.
Okay.
Look, like I'll give you an example. I was playing golf with Mark Giordano. He was the captain of the Calgary Flames of the NHL. And he later went on to win the Norris Trophy as the best defenseman, stud guy. And I said, Mark, are there guys in the minor leagues that are actually more talented than you? And he goes, lots of them. He goes, but they're not sacrificing. Like Mark's, he's like, look, man, I'm not the most talented defenseman. I play guys in the minors that are 2 leagues down that are better than me. But I worked so much harder and I was able to sustain so much more pain and pressure, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
So like a very, very big part of it, like, look, not all of us are going to reach top performer status. Not all of us are going to be the top partner in the law firm, right? But there is a price that you have to pay, the minimum price of admission. And when you get to the top level, most people aren't willing to pay the minimum price of admission. Like you probably sacrificed a shit ton to get to the level you got to in your legal career. You're talking about, 16-hour work days.
Of course.
2,200 billable hours a year. How many people are actually willing to do it? Forget the money. Who's actually willing to sacrifice most of their hobbies and personal life to achieve that level of career in your 20s? Almost nobody. And everybody says I'm willing, but once they try it, what did you say out of your graduating class? 150?
Yeah, 150 and maybe 15 got into corporate law and maybe 5 into top 5 firms, I would say.
And of those, maybe 2 make partner.
Yeah.
Maybe 1. That's the reality, right? Because the higher you go, the level of sacrifice becomes greater. So yeah, there's a defining characteristic. Grit is like super important. Now, again, we can all pay the same price, that minimum price of admission of grit. But the thing is, at the end of the day, our ceilings are still different.
Right.
You know what I mean? Our ceilings are different. Like, I'll tell you right now, Gabe, like talking to you and understanding how you process information, like I wouldn't want to compete with you at law. I just wouldn't want to do it, man. You're patient, you're calculating, you're meticulous. I can tell that about you, man. And the way you follow through, like I did a real estate deal with you, and the way that you're like, hey, in 1 month you have blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I got my COO's birthday today, and I discovered it at lunch when somebody messaged me that it was his birthday. I'm like, oh, happy birthday,
Yeah.
I'm just not that good at those meticulous details. That's not where I'm. So I would not make a good corporate lawyer. I know that. But I would hate to compete with me in sales, because I'm impatient, which is actually very good for sales a lot of times. I'm tenacious. I get very fired up when I don't get what I want right now, which is great for sales because it drives me to the next call immediately. Makes sense?
Yeah.
And now everybody has levels of that, but the thing is that it gives me a ceiling for sales that once I've paid the price for tenacity, I also have a pretty high ceiling I can go for.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Interesting thing. You're a very high energy person.
Yes.
Right? We spoke about that previously, that, that kind of actually makes a good leader. That even in law as well, actually, the common trait among best performers is high energy, being out there, holding the client and being able to convey your point of view very well, regardless whether it's to a client or to the other side, to the court, doesn't matter. Would you say ever in your career you were perceived as too pushy? Did you ever think that, oh, maybe I, lost a client because, I was following up too many times? How do you deal with that?
Look, I say this, man. I hope I was perceived as too pushy. I hope I lost many people because I was too aggressive. I hope that's the case.
Right.
Because Grant Cardone used to say this, man. If you're running a sales team and you're not getting complaints every day, your salespeople are too aggressive, then they just don't care enough. Obviously, man. Of course I lost people because I was too aggressive. You know what I tell them? Fuck you.
Right.
Like, yes, there's 2 kinds of people. There's those that have to learn to show their teeth, and there's those that have to learn to hide their teeth. And if you have to learn to show your teeth, you're going to have a hard time in life, my bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my wife said that about you because we were riding in the car looking, and she's like, this Gabe, he's a real wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm like, I know. Because you're so quiet and you ask smart questions, you build rapport, you kind of guide the conversation, but you're calculating, And that's like, I remember I was reading a history lesson and it was about Joseph Stalin.
Okay.
And how like publicly he would meet with these world leaders and they all thought he was a complete oaf. He would wear his military boots, his little uniform, But like then you read about Zhukov and Stalin. Zhukov in his memoir, he's like, Stalin had a crazy temper. Like, and he's like, if he didn't relight a cigar after he went out, you're about to get exploded on. But although, and Stalin was actually a pretty brilliant, not to say that he didn't do a lot of horrible, evil stuff, but he was a pretty brilliant war tactician. Like before the machinery of war, like World War I level stuff, he actually, commanded some good units for the Bolsheviks, right?
Yeah.
But again, the other leaders that met him thought he was a buffoon. And part of that was like, he was just very calculating, kind of like he would lay out his plan years in advance and meticulously follow through, so he learned to hide his teeth. But people that have to learn to show their teeth, meaning that they have to learn how to be more ambitious, they have to learn how to be more pushy, they have to learn how to ask for what they want. That's lack of assertiveness. And I would way rather get somebody that's too assertive and then teach them to control that, because I can't teach somebody to be more ambitious. You can't teach that.
Interesting. I mean, when I was starting out, that was kind of, looking back at it, I think sometimes I would get feedback I'm actually too pushy.
Good.
Or too ambitious. Whatever it may be. Different people call it different names and phrase it in different ways. And then initially I thought, well, I live in England. I'm from Eastern Europe, right? Maybe it's a mentality thing, because here people are just generally maybe a little bit more upfront, and in England, you sort of need to know how to control your emotions more. And then over time, I think, a big challenge for me was to sort of know how to calibrate my, sort of game, right? Maybe that's how you call it, and know how to read the room. And in one room, like with one client, you should be more out there, charismatic, talking, more loud. And with another person, you're, trying to be the opposite of that, right? How do you deal with that? I'm sure with clients, you have the same,
of course,
situation, right? How do you get to the point when you can confidently read the person and know how to adjust?
So there's a couple things going on there. One thing that you mentioned is really interesting is like about being too pushy. I should qualify that. Like, you should be ambitious, but you have to back it up with ridiculous competence. Because by definition, if you have high ambition or like you're just disagreeable, but you're low conscientious, that's what a narcissist and a sociopath are. Like narcissists, for example, are people that are highly disagreeable but low conscientious. So they think they deserve all these things. They fight for all these things, but they can't actually deliver the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I know dealing with you, the way that your clients experience you is like insane. I dealt with a top realtor, like in Dubai, one of the top realtors, and the follow through is excellent. When our clients deal with us, when they deal with me, like when I'm dealing with a celebrity client, like my follow through and execution is I'm up at 3 a.m. making sure that their product is being delivered on time exactly as it was requested. And if anything goes wrong, I'm the first person to make a call and not hide behind a screen, right? So the ambition has to be matched congruently with the conscientiousness, with the follow through and execution, right? Now you talk about, how to read the room. So first of all, like, like in sales, when we start out, like one of the core trainings we do is like just reading the client. Like for example, the DISC scale, and you can basically, like, is he a driver? Like, is he high dominance? Is he an influencer? Like high amicability? Is he and we have different names for it, right? We can call it like a driver, a detective, et cetera, et cetera. There's basically 4 archetypes to kind of break down, and we kind of, learn how to navigate those 4 kind of people, right?
Yeah.
But what's really cool is when you get to the very, very top, because when you're working your way up, right? Like, and I'm always working my way up with people, you're sort of acquiescing to their base persona because you're influencing, right?
Of course.
But at some point, like I work with celebrities, then they become the star of the show. And I love working with those people because they're the most genuine people that have nothing to lose anymore, And so my thing is, people ask me like, what's the number one driving thing about like building a company? I'm like, my number one driving thing is not having to answer to anyone. Because I can be me and say what I want to say. Now, the irony of that is, in order to be a leader, don't have to answer to anyone. You have to be the best damn follower. Right. Because to do what I do, you have to have done what I've done. Make sense? But yes, the core tenet of being able to read an individual and to subsequently communicate with that person to their level, that's not something you learn without a tremendous amount of maturity. It's like comedy. There's not a lot of Justin Biebers in comedy.
Of course.
You have to have the experience and the pain. And the same in sales. You have to have the experience and the pain,
Yeah. Interesting.
Sure, it's the same in law.
Yeah. I would say it's just practicing doing the same thing over and over again and learning from your mistakes. And also, I would say, having a good mentor.
That's what we talk about in the piano thing, right?
Yeah. Having a good mentor or someone you can look up to, and then not necessarily doing exactly what they do, like, exactly following their footsteps, but trying to take the pluses and adapt them to your own patterns of behavior. I found that to be most useful, because you think you will never really be the same person, right? And everyone does things slightly differently. But what is useful, I found, is like, especially when you start out in law in particular, being exposed to as many people, as many senior lawyers as possible, doing as many different deals. And it doesn't matter what you do, right? It could be really, what we call grunt work, due diligence, proofreading, doing checklists and so on. Getting that experience as many times as possible in your early years will really set you apart for a very long, career and put you ahead. Because some people go into this and they think they're going to be, I don't know if you watch Suits.
Yeah, sure.
Harvey, people will think you're Harvey Specter on day one. That doesn't happen, right? So, but I think what's interesting you said about grit, I think that's also very powerful and applies to law as well. Because I would say it's grit and endurance. You need to, for you to be able, and that's why I always say, good athletes make pretty good lawyers.
Good athletes make good salespeople too.
Because they know how to take the pain.
Dude, I'll tell you, man. So I used to play hockey with the medical student team in Vancouver. And these guys, they would come after like 16 hours in the ER, like for their residency. They were just dog tired. They're like, I got an exam to write the next day and I got and they were just dog tired. And I'd say, man, like, why are they breaking it like this? And the one of my friends, David, on the team he's I think a urologist now, a very bright guy. He goes, Dimitri, we made it into medical school. We're all bright. He goes, they're testing how we perform under pressure, because sometimes you go into ER and you got a 12-hour shift and somebody comes in bleeding. You got to save their life. Exactly. They're weeding you out for pressure, not for intelligence, because you're all smart. I think it's the same for lawyers. Like if you get into a big firm, it's 2 a.m, your client in Japan calls that a deal needs to be closed. You better do it or the next guy's getting it. And the firm is going to,
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. And the thing is, actually, I found it, when you start out the first 2 years in England, what you do, it's called the training contract. Effectively, you're not yet a fully qualified lawyer. You've done your law degree, but you're still doing 2 years of training, right? And effectively, but you're still working, right? So you're kind of a junior lawyer, right? In my experience, those were actually the toughest mentally years, because that's when you really need to put in 15, 16-hour days quite often. And the most challenging thing I found was you don't really control your schedule. And that's the point about the 2-hour, 2 a.m. call from a client, right? You're the first responder, right? And then you pass it on to the more senior person, you pass it on to the associate, and then maybe a partner gets involved. But looking back at it, I did have a pretty tough, first 2 years. But now I'm very grateful for that, because once you've done, 50 legal opinions, you've drafted them. Once you've done 100 checklists, and then you're 5 years in, 6 years in, at that point you have more junior people helping you, of course. But, that gives you the perspective, gives you the knowledge, gives you the confidence, and you know all the issues at that point, right? So I think there's nothing. I mean, what do they say? 10,000 hours.
Yeah,
that's when you kind of know your thing.
You can't skip that step.
Absolutely, hard work, grit, and not giving up.
It's like, you can't learn to do crazy solos on guitar. You got to know your chords and the root chords, and then you learn, and you build from that, and then everything starts to connect. A lot of people want to skip that, man. A lot of people want to go right to the top, like, oh, hey, Dimitri, I'm gonna work in your company and talk to celebrities. I'm like, dude, I won't let you, I won't even let a celebrity know you exist for minimum 10 years. I'll tell you a quick story, man. I made this mistake one time. A client invited me. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. A client invited me on a yacht party in Dubai.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. But I couldn't go that day because I had my whole family with me, and the kids were doing crazy stuff. I'm like, I want to take the kids. So I sent one of my junior, it was a lady that was working with us back then in Dubai. And I'm like, I'm going to send her on the yacht. She'll meet some of the clients and everything. And then I go about my day. I get a call from the client at the end of the day. He's like, don't ever do that to me again. I go, what happened? He's like, you sent a junior person on a yacht. Like, I invited you. I didn't invite the junior salesperson. And like, he used some words that like, I'm not going to say here, but it was like, I don't want this person around me or any of the clients I brought ever again, because she's not at the level to be allowed to communicate with these people.
Right.
Because, she inadvertently, she's a nice girl, but like inadvertently does something that like exposes that she's just an amateur. And it doesn't come off well. And it's like, when you're at that level, you don't want those people in the room. You want people that get the job done. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And that was a good lesson for me. And I'm like, okay, can't put this person in front of those people. It doesn't work. Like, and young people all think, I'm ready for the big time. It's like, dude, you're going to get crushed.
Yeah. The thing is, this just reminds me of just, everyone thinks, I mean, you see this in like first year university, you get or sometimes you see it at like internships, or you see some of those people in your first year of like being a junior lawyer, like doing the, training contract. You see this person who, probably got all, first class degrees, very confident, maybe very popular, maybe they were, a popular person at school or high school or university and so on. And they come in with this sort of, kind of bravado almost. And they think they're going to close the deal and, be the big boss and so on. And the funny thing is, those people usually don't actually last that long.
They get killed, yeah.
Or they adapt. Either they adapt to it, or they just, I've seen people who've quit, who've changed professions. Some have adapted, which is fine. But, when the advice I always give, younger people is you should go in like an open book, right? You just go in, you roll up your sleeves, you do as much of grunt work as possible, because the expectation is very low, right? At that point, you're a trainee. Well, you made a mistake. Everyone expects you to make a mistake. But what's important being, knowing your time management skills, right? Not lying. Yeah. Some people try to hide. You made a mistake.
No,
to hide
especially with higher level people. The moment you try to hide a mistake, you get burned. Like, you just get exposed immediately.
And that's huge for law, right? Because that's liability issues. I mean, you're putting the firm at stake, so on. Own up to your mistake. You're a trainee. You're supposed to make mistakes. Right. That's fine. Having a good attitude, that's just such a massive thing.
Huge.
Like, I had people who would, maybe they might not be the most brightest person, right? Or maybe they are bright. Maybe they haven't necessarily done, the best job, but they had a good attitude. They were positive about it. They followed up. They tried to be helpful. And that just goes such a huge way. And I feel like, you do it for the first few years, and then experience will come. And then that's why I was asking you previously about charisma and, reading the room, because that's how I feel like those soft skills, at least in law, you should base. Like, no one is going to necessarily put a 2-year experienced lawyer in front of a big client, right? You're not going to talk to the CEO,
sure,
right? You're not going to talk to the general counsel. But you have that time to build up your skills. You build up your professional skills. The soft skills, they sort of come later. But I think it's also helpful. That's why I was saying that, sales is important even in our profession. The psychology behind it. If you can start developing it sooner, that's great, but you have to have that base.
What was it? Something like 2/3 of all billionaires had sold something door to door. It's a real, isn't that crazy?
No, I mean, totally, foreseeable.
Well, just, like learning how to communicate. Like, it's funny how we call it soft skills, but they're the hardest to get.
Yeah.
And they're the hardest to demonstrate, and they're the hardest to adapt. And they're the hardest to even quantify, like what it doesn't even mean. But you said it correctly, man. Like, what you said about, like, somebody coming in with a little bit of ego and bravado. It's like, man, like, you want to try having an ego in the real world, like on the streets, you will get squashed.
Yeah.
You come in and you better be like, it's funny, man. There are people in our company too. And I've had a conversation very recent, like a week ago, with one of our guys. And he's just like, man, I really want to get ahead. I haven't got, it's been 6 years, like, I'm doing this and I haven't. I'm like, yeah, you haven't learned shit in 6 years. He was like, really? I'm like, why do you think you're the same place now 6 years ago? Because you still have that ego. You still want to be the man, It's like, nobody's holding you down but you. Learn to do, like how many times I said, have I come to you with a project that you just didn't want to do? And you said, no, like, I don't want to do it. Okay, congratulations. You beat your boss, man. Good for you. You know what I did with that? I didn't continue to persuade you. I went to the next person.
Right.
You know how many things you were passed over for because you just didn't say yes?
Yeah.
You were passed over for. Now other people are getting all these opportunities. Yeah, because I don't want to come to you with an opportunity because I have to convince you to do something that actually helps you. No way.
So this is the positive attitude point, right?
Yes.
This is the determination. And I think it's good to have, a little bit maybe of, we're not robots, right? Everyone has a personality. Like there's nothing wrong with maybe a little bit of arrogance here and there,
Sure.
Or maybe a little bit of personal, I would say self-accountability, right?
Yep.
If you want to put yourself to a high standard, that's good. It actually puts a bit of pressure on you to perform. But I think not setting yourself up too high from the get-go, not thinking of yourself as, the big boss on day one. That's like the most common mistake some people make. And I found I always went and I said, I was frank with people, look, I don't know how to do it. I can find a way how to do it. And, it has sort of worked out. But you're right. Positive attitude is just such a huge thing. And it doesn't matter even if you're junior or senior, right? There's a lot of stuff we've been talking about, sales and other things that I'm constantly learning, right? And I feel like knowing that and admitting to not knowing something, that's also a big thing, right? Because a lot of people just sort of...
They just lie.
Yeah, they think, well, I can't admit that I don't know something because people will judge me and they will think I'm, not experienced maybe.
At the top level, right?
Yeah.
Quickest way to lose trust, don't admit a mistake.
Exactly.
Quickest way to lose trust. Like immediately, okay, something's off. People have especially people at the top that have paid the price, they have that intuition. Like they're like, no, something's off. And their intuition's very good.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Pay the price. Like you made a mistake, you say, hey man, I made a mistake. And I'm going to tell you about it before you bring it up. Like if I have to bring up your mistake before you bring up a mistake, we're going to have a problem.
Of course. I think transparency, that's a big thing.
Huge.
I find the biggest challenge, maybe not the challenge actually, but the most precious thing I would say in a client relationship is trust, right?
How do you define trust?
I need to think about this one, right? I would say, at least from a legal perspective, right? In sales might be slightly different, but let's say from a legal perspective, what I found that the highest degree of trust I felt from clients was when they know that I genuinely have their best interest at heart and I will actually act the same way if I was in their shoes, right? It's almost like you're trying to guide someone through a busy intersection, okay? And there's cars coming all the way. You're with them there. If you make a mistake, both of you will get hit by a car, right? So when the person can trust you to navigate them through a very challenging situation and they know that you're in with them throughout the way and they're okay with that, that's when I found, on different transactions that I have worked on, is when you do develop that sort of trust.
So what you're saying is they feel like you take personal accountability over the outcome.
Correct.
Yeah. Huge.
And they feel safe.
Sure.
Right. And actually they feel, it sounds cliche because all lawyers say, oh, we really care.
Right.
We really care. We are really, the best, we'll provide you with the best service.
Sure.
Right. But how do you define that? I found that in my experience, at least, when the client knows that I'm actually there with him in the trenches, right? And I will take personal responsibility, as you say, personal accountability for it. That's when you develop the biggest trust, for sure.
Big words, but are the actions there, right?
Exactly.
That's how my clients trust is the gap, let's say, between the things I say and the results you receive. And so for me, when somebody asks me about the outcome they're going to get, or they're going to like it, or it's high quality, I'm like, look, I get paid to tell you it's high quality. What do you think I'm going to say? But transparently, I don't really make that much in every transaction I do. So I want to get lots of transactions from you until one of us dies. And how do I do that, Gabe?
Yeah, by building a trust, by delivering a good product.
So I say, don't judge me at my word, judge me at my delivery. Yeah. And that's the way that I want to be judged because I take pride in that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's my answer. That's actually my answer to trust. Because guys are like, oh, how do I know this? No, well, you don't know.
You see, the thing is, you work a lot with individuals, right?
Yeah.
All of your clients are individuals.
Yeah.
For us, clients are companies.
Companies are just individuals.
So this is the thing, right? You hit the nail on the head. Sometimes, especially if you're junior, you're dealing with a large corporate. They also work for the company. You work for a big company. You're doing something. You don't really know what you're doing in the sort of grand scheme of things. You don't really know what is at stake, who benefits from it, and so on. But, I found that once you start taking it a bit more personal and putting yourself in that person's shoes and actually trying to make their lives easier. And it's really like the little things, Most of the deals are, okay, they have a precedent, right? They have been, even though we say hasn't been done before, okay, something similar was done before, okay? It's always based on some sort of precedent on a transaction. The little things, the follow through, the reminder.
That was nice, yeah.
Trying to do something that will make the person's life easier. Because, if let's say you're dealing with a banker at a bank, right? They will have, let's say, the legal team within the bank. They will have the tax people within the bank. They will also have the other side, let's say the buyer or the seller. Mm-hmm. They will have the borrower. And you're just one element of it. You're their lawyer, right? You're just doing the legal stuff. But they have all this other stuff happening, frequently 500 emails a day. There's two ways, right? Let's say there's an issue. You can send an email or you can make a phone call.
Yeah.
What do you think most people do?
Well, of course, they hide behind the screen. I have a mentor who's much older than me in the business. He used to own a humongous manufacturing for clothes. He used to tell me, never hide behind the screen. He's like, when you have bad news, you pick up the phone or you show up in person. And Micro Friends, he said it too. In Mafia, they have the sit down. It's always face to face. Yeah. Right. You don't hide behind the screen.
Yeah.
But of course, most people just want to send an email or a text just to not deal with it, or ghost.
Yeah.
Ghosting, that won't last.
So most people would send an email and then just say, well, I've technically informed the client. That's their problem now. And I find that's what differentiates really successful lawyers, is actually saying, look, not this is the problem. Here's the problem. Here's the law.
But here's the solution.
Here's the solution.
Yes.
You call them and you say, look, this is what happened. Yep. For example, document came from the other side. All these points they're trying to make. They're trying to,
Yeah, and here's how I'm going to,
this is how I'm going to solve it.
It's the dinner conversation with my wife. Never ask me what I want for dinner. Like, nothing bothers you more. You come home and your partner's like, what do you want for dinner? Like, dude, I just make it. Yeah, exactly. So I tell my COO, all the time, I'm like, come to me with a solution. Because he comes to me with problems. I'm like, I got this wrong. Okay, what's the solution? He's like, no, come to me with a solution.
Yeah.
Like, you should be coming to me with options for a solution and tell me which option you think is the best. It's so rare that people come to us with solutions. Right? Because most people just, here's the problem, see ya, right?
Yeah.
Come to me with a solution. And I do with my clients. I'm like, hey, here's what happened. Here's the solution. I had a situation with a very famous guy recently that we delivered a jacket and we had an error in manufacturing, and unfortunately the thing didn't fit. Mm-hmm. And I called and then I sent a follow-up email with all the points. I'm like, hey, here's what happened. It's 100% on us. Like, everybody knows that. Look, it's embarrassing for me, but I need you to know that. Yeah. Like, that's not the end of this interaction. Like, here's the solution, blah, 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 blah. Here's how I'm going to solve it. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to oversight it. Like, everything was laid out. And the client replied, he's like, man, like, don't feel bad. Like, this happens in life. Like, this, like, he was like, I don't even think this was your fault. I think there's obviously something that went, in the supply chain, there was some issue and nobody could have foreseen it. It was just something that was very unique for us because it was a very innovative product.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's fine. But I'm still responsible and I still want to live up to the reputation that I've gained with you. And I'm going to make it right.
Yeah. And this is the huge thing, right? Like, it takes so long to build trust, but it takes.
Yeah. The elevator down's very quick.
This is so massive.
Yeah.
And I think we always have this sort of feeling sometimes that, well, there's always going to be another one, whatever, maybe this one didn't work out, but, you can get something else. I find it so difficult, actually, to be able to preserve long-term relationships, and the point is you need to keep investing in it.
That's unique for you. I'll tell you why, because you're dealing as a top lawyer with high-level people. Okay. When the higher level person you deal with, the more you they see, meaning that it's not just you, it's other people. Like, if I deal with Alice Cooper to make him suits, how many companies right now would like to make suits for Alice Cooper? right? He's got a lot of Dimitry in his life, not just me, but he's got a lot of Dimitrys. Does that make sense? So it's like the higher you go, the quicker you become replaceable. Like I work with Eddie Hall, you know, doing like some of the fight gear for his upcoming fight. A lot of companies want to do that. The higher up you go, the more replaceable you are. Okay. It's like professional sports. I get this example a lot. Let's say I play football, like American, not American football, like soccer, like European football with my friends, right?
You mean football? Like
football. That's what I mean, right? So I'm playing, so I'm playing football, and like during the game with my friends, I might touch the ball a lot of times and I might screw up a lot of those touches, right? I watched the game one time and Messi was playing, and Messi touched the ball 3 times the whole game. Like at that level, but each time he touched the ball, he made magic happen.
Right.
You know how quickly somebody's replaceable if they're touching the ball out of those 3 times they get and they're not making magic happen? They get replaced like that. The higher up you go, the more replaceable you are. So the stakes get higher. Like for example, I'm going to be going to the Fury Usyk fight in Saudi Arabia. I have a couple of like big time CEOs coming with me. You know what I mean? They can replace me and our company as their suit people immediately. Makes sense?
Of course.
So I don't have the grace of screwing up. But the thing is, I've done sales for so long at such a high level with the company that we've built here that I trust that when the ball comes to me, I'm going to make magic happen. I trust myself, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about. Now, most people, they don't experience it at that level. They're like, well, you know, I have lots of opportunities. Yeah, because you're not that easily replaceable. You know, like if you're dating fat and ugly and you're fat and ugly, they're not going to replace you very easily because they're fat and ugly too. So they're going to fight for something that's not maybe worth fighting for, right? And I actually teach my salespeople this, and I teach everybody in my life this. Don't try to change a person, change the person. like don't try to change them, change them.
Right. No, that makes
but you have to have the ability to change them. Like, of course. See you later. You follow?
Yeah.
Like, look, you're a client of LGFG. I know you can buy suits anywhere. You're a lawyer. Like, man, you're going to go to Dubai. You're going to go to, Abu Dhabi. Lots of companies are going to want to make suits for you. That's a fact. You know what I mean? I just had a beef with my lawyer because he said something very profoundly stupid and he didn't even realize his firm represented me. Like this guy was a client. He said, I was like, dude, you've been my lawyers for 10 years. You just cost your firm the relationship. Yeah. And I know a lot of companies that want LGFG as a client.
Of course.
So again, we learn the hard way all the time. You know how many times I've lost the sale, I've lost the client because I did something profoundly stupid, not realizing it was profoundly stupid. Learn my lesson.
How do you build back from that?
With great difficulty. Take ownership immediately and be the first. I tell people this: if you break my trust, I better find out from you.
Of course.
If I find out you broke my trust from somebody else, the relationship is burned. And I actually learned this in our business because we sell to fairly wealthy, successful people. You know how often wealthy, successful people write a negative review on like Google or something? Never.
Yeah.
You knew that, hey? So we learn in our business, they quietly disappear. If our clients experience an issue, they don't bring it up. They just don't. They don't go, hey man, if something was wrong, can you fix? Like they just don't say anything. They just quietly disappear and we never hear from them again. It's crazy. When I hired my president, that's how I knew he was good, is he said, you know, some of the processes, I want to help improve them because I don't want people quietly disappearing. I'm like, oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's good. So I guess first impressions last. If you're meeting...
amongst other things.
Yeah.
Amongst other things, right? It's not a one word answer. You know what I mean? In order to gain the credibility, man, people are like, oh, you guys are blowing social media, doing all the suits for celebrities. Like, dude, I slaved away for 14 years before this point. Like,
of course,
really, like, never thinking that I deserve any of this, by the way. Telling myself, like as an affirmation, I deserve this. But at the same time, working to actually deserve what I told myself I deserved. Knowing that it might never actualize. Fine. You know, and yeah, there's also... And, you know, people that don't make it, they say it's luck. It's like, dude, like, if the ball comes to you in the penalty area and you can kick a goal, that might be luck. But it's like, you better damn know how to finish by the time he gets there. And you've gone through a lot of iterations to know how to handle that exact play.
And you've gone through a lot of training to even be on the pitch. Yeah. Right? Even to be in the room, even to be with that client, even to be with that celebrity. Yep. Right? You've done a lot of stuff. You've done a lot of hard work, grunt, perseverance, grit.
Look, one example, I use Jordan Peterson because he's a more famous guy that wears our suits. And it's like, man, try lying to that guy. Like, just try obfuscating the truth in like the smallest sense of the word, right? It's like, no, man, like he's so intelligent and so wise. And like, he just reads, he looks at you and he just reads your soul. It's like, he knows very quickly at that level. He knows exactly what he's dealing with. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I like to say, I mean, to me, it was a very proud moment for me where we made him some suits and he let us make him some more. That was a proud moment for me. You know why? Because it was a reaffirmation that like what I'm doing and what I believe I'm doing is the truth, you know? But I don't take that for granted.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's a deep topic there, man. But but again, and there's one other element I'd like to add to this because I think it's something worth noting. It's like we all think we're good, we all think we're great, and that's all fine, right? But what we most often forget is we're also competing with others that think the same thing about themselves. And the market doesn't care about your opinion.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how good you think you are, the market will choose the best. And if you're not the best, you're not getting chosen. So look at the market as the truth.
There's a good saying about that in our profession. It says, you're only as good as your last deal, right? So you've done your last deal, great, but then there's a new one, right? Some people take it even further. They say you're only as good as your last email. So, yeah.
I think you're only as good as your next deal.
I guess. But, it goes to the same point, right? Like, it's difficult to build trust. It's easy to ruin it. And then holding that benchmark year after year, month after month is hard, But you can do it.
You know what's great, though? I'm going to finish on this. I want to say this. If you've done it right, it gets so much easier. I'll tell you an example. It was so hard for me to sell clients when we started. Nobody knew the brand. Nobody knew me. Nobody trusted anything. I had to sell, right? It's so easy for me now to sell suits to clients. I meet with CEOs. I go on their yachts. I literally was on a yacht with a client. He's like, oh, I want to get all this shit. I'm like, whatever, right? It's so hard to date when you're young because you're meeting a lot of crappy people that are just terrible people. You don't want to deal with them, right? You get a great wife or a great girlfriend, stick with that. And so what I learned as you get older, I just went to my friend's wedding last week. We've known each other 31 years. He flew from Japan to my wedding 11 years ago. So I flew to his wedding, right? So we've known each other for that long a time. The trust is there because I know the consistency and whatever, right? Men especially, I can't speak for them, but with men, what you learn about successful men is that once they find something that works, they stick with it. They find a tailor, they're stuck with that tailor. They love it. They get a barber, they don't change barbers. They don't want the risk. I get a restaurant, I go to that same restaurant all the time. I've had the same friends in some cases for, like I said, 31 years. You get somebody good on your team, you stick with that person because there's less of a fluctuation in the result, the outcome. Less, the risk is reduced, right? Yeah. And so it gets so much easier. And people are like, you talk to the top lawyers in your profession, the most senior lawyers, deals just come to them all the time.
Of course.
That's a grind, but now it's so easy.
But it's like your brand, right? I feel it's always about your reputation. It's your reputation first internally. So within your organization, being the person who can deliver, being the person who is reliable, right? And having a good work ethic, obviously that goes without saying. But then you slowly start building a reputation externally, right? With clients directly. And as you get more senior, the reputation starts spreading, right? The other thing also with the other side too, right? Don't be a difficult person to deal with on the other side of the deal.
You have to be easy to work with. You have to be easy to deal with, and you have to be easy to do business with. I learned that from Dave Brown. Shout out to Brown, who's a sales consultant. He taught me this when I was maybe 22, 23. He goes, you have to be easy to work with, you have to be easy to deal with, and you have to be easy to do business with. And I've always reminded myself, am I being easy to do business with? So many people, they lost my business. They were just hard to work with. Dude,
That's a good one.
Any farting words, Gabe? Anything you want to shout out to the world? You're a top guys. Pay attention to this guy. He's a rising star in the legal world. You've done Moscow office, London office, now Abu Dhabi office.
Yes, thank you. Very, very, very flattering. What can I say? Buy more suits from this guy.
Yay! Like I said, we don't do paid ads here or anything like that.
No, but I will say one thing though, about since we're at the office of a great tailoring company. I do get suits from this gentleman. I've never regretted it. Certainly. Once I will say one thing: once you go with him, you don't want to look back. So
thanks, man. There. We just like you and your legal career, man. We go hardcore into doing what we do, and we want to be the best at it. And I tell people, it's what's your goal? It's my goal is in 10 years. Somebody asked, was that you that asked me somebody else asked me that today, actually, that we did a TV interview. They said, who do you want to be in 10 years? And I said, man, I look at Tom Ford. I'm like, that guy walks into him. Everybody knows that's Tom Ford, but that didn't come overnight.
Of course.
That came from 30 to 30 years of building some of the greatest stuff in the world. Right. And we want to take to the tailoring world, what some of the most innovative people took to the other facets of the world. we take this really seriously. You know, you look at it, you can't see from outside the studio. We got suits, we got people working out there. We got Ozzy Osbourne's, Metallica's, Backstreet Boys, like everything hanging right there. I'm doing some suits for the Elton John show coming up on March 20th in Washington, DC. You know, this is not taken for granted. Like we take this as seriously as I saw my legal clients, which is most of my clients were lawyers when I started. For 10 years, I mostly worked law firms, right? I would like to believe that we take this as seriously as our legal clients take the legal profession. That includes the ethics behind it. We talked about, you know, the ethics of the profession. We even have a document we distributed internally that came from one of the Magic Circle firms. We don't know which one, but it talks about like how it says, it might be old because it says you charge $800 an hour to your clients. Remember that.
Yeah.
And we shared that amongst our people. Like, so I appreciate that you're noticing that. And obviously we notice it too, because, you know, we've done business both ways. So thank you, Gabe. And
thanks everyone.